It was a sad day yesterday. They have chosen this particular road, and I think it's a low road.
This is a great betrayal of Indigenous Australians, a betrayal of Australians generally.
Peter Dutton has turned up with a sledgehammer because that's all he has in his toolkit.
I'm advocating a no vote because I don't believe it's in our country's best interest, and I don't believe that it's going to deliver the practical outcomes for people in regional and rural areas.
This is a divisive position that Peter Dutton has taken.
What the PM's doing at the moment is dividing our country, and what we proposed yesterday, I think, is an opportunity to unite our country.
They're shrinking further into negativity with their opposition to what is a gracious and generous offer.
As people in Indigenous communities have said to us, they just don't want city-based academics pretending to represent their views. They want practical outcomes on the ground.
The disingenuous nature of this response is summed up by talking about a Canberra voice.
Just a Canberra-based voice that's bureaucratic.
This is an opportunity for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to have a voice to Canberra.
We just end up with another layer of bureaucracy.
Well, I think that Peter Dutton underestimates the goodwill and the generosity of so many Liberal and National Party voters who will, along with Richard Archer and others, support a voice and support constitutional recognition.
I think we need to elevate this issue beyond divisive, nasty politics and walk together.
Some breaking news now. Former Indigenous Affairs Minister Ken Wyatt is so incensed with the Liberals' stand, he's now quit the party.
There we go.
We do believe very strongly in a local and regional advisory body so that we can get the practical support to people on the ground.
Peter Dutton was part of a government for almost a decade. Almost a decade.
So for them to now turn around at this 12th hour and say, oh, we've got another idea, is just disingenuous.
Everyone wants a better outcome for Indigenous Australians, but if we're going to change the Constitution, we need to understand what it's about.
He's like the National Undertaker, seeking to kill Uluru.
What the PM's saying at the moment is just vote for it on a vibe, and I'll tell you the detail afterwards.
He's just not honest.
It's a Judas betrayal.
When you change the Constitution, you change it for good.
It's now in the hands of 18 million Australians.
And this is about whether we as a country can be optimistic, can be enlarged, can come to terms with the fullness and richness of our history. And if not now, when?
Labor Senator Mullenderi McCarthy joins us now. Senator, as a politician, you probably weren't that surprised, but as an Indigenous woman, how did it feel to hear the Liberals announce they won't be supporting the voice?
Well, I was incredibly saddened when I saw the news yesterday in regards to the opposition leader's position. But we all know that it really isn't a surprise, but it doesn't take away from the deep disappointment, especially felt by First Nations people, that this has been chosen to take a road that clearly is about treating the issue as a political football.
He makes one central charge, which is that when you have a national body and you don't have the local and regional bodies there, you don't get good results. And so the voice ultimately won't change anything. What's your response to that argument?
Well, I think Ken Wyatt's response today says it all, really, that he took to the Cabinet the Kalma-Langton review, and in that they talked about regional and local voices. And if this referendum is successful, then it's the Parliament that would determine the model and also look at local and regional voices. So I just think confusing the Australian public about issues that Peter Dutton knows was taken to his cabinet when Scott Morrison was Prime Minister by Ken Wyatt twice just shows how low this has gone. And I just want to lift it again and say to Australian people, this is your chance to see the real truth that's going on here and to vote with your hearts.
Senator, we know without bipartisan support, referendums historically fail. So how do you pull it back from this moment?
Well, we keep going. We keep going. We've known on embarking on this journey that 8 out of 44 referenda is the statistic that we're up against. And now we know that we won't have Peter Dutton's support. But I'm still reaching out to Liberals in the Liberal Party room, people like Bridget Archer, who we know now are supporting us. But I'm going to reach out still to those front benches and say, do you really want to be on the wrong side of history? join us.
We know that the polls have been showing that over time support for the voice has slowly been declining. There seems to be a little bit of scepticism about, I don't know, a little fear, I suppose, in the electorate about exactly what this means. Do you think your government has been clear enough and strong enough over the journey in explaining this to the Australian people?
Our role has been to carry it through the Parliament, and that has been through legislation. We've had overwhelming bipartisan support in getting the referendum machinery bill through, and that was an important act. And now we're on the constitutional alteration bill with a parliamentary inquiry that will go across Australia over the next 4 weeks. And we know that we do have the support of the Greens, the crossbench, and certainly the Teals, and we will embark on that. But I would say to Australians that you can get informed. There is a Yes campaign out there, and they can be tapped into, and they're the ones who are out there actually reaching out to Australians, because this isn't about politicians. This is about the Australian people, and the information is there for you.
Malarndirri McCarthy, thank you so much for your time tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So what now?
Look, I think if anyone's feeling a little bit confused by what all this means, take the time to go back and actually read the Uluru Statement from the Heart. It's 400 words or something, but it's an exquisite piece of writing, and it just sums up so perfectly what this means and what it will mean for not just our country, but our Indigenous, brothers and sisters, and what that means for reconciliation and moving forward as a nation.
Yeah, but the problem, as she acknowledged, referenda are really hard to pass. And when you look at the referenda that have passed, they've tended to be really simple.
I know.
Really basic. They have bipartisan support because there's actually not much to get into about them.
Yeah.
The easiest way to defeat them is to make them confusing, and they've done a very good job of making this confusing to people, and so they get worried.
But I don't want to just throw up our hands and just go, well, other referendums haven't succeeded unless it's had bipartisan support. I think we have to be more hopeful about this.
In the words of John Farnham, you're the voice, try and understand.
Yeah. Well said.